It's nice to see you. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Bolette, and good morning, everybody.
How's it going?
It's all good. I mean, excited, nervous,
Yeah.
that usual classic conference talk feeling. You know how it goes.
Yeah. I feel a bit excited too. Excited about being here, especially excited to be back on stage with you, Andy.
That's right. I think it was 2 years ago, but
Yeah.
it feels like a lifetime ago.
It feels so long ago. Back then, we both represented the DXP group here at Umbraco, but now we're here representing the Umbraco CMS, and I'm product manager of the CMS. And you?
Yeah, and I'm the head of CMS now. So yeah, it's a big privilege to have this role. It's it's a challenge, but it's been very rewarding taking it on.
Yeah.
So you've moved from commercial products to open source, and how's that been for you?
It's been amazing. It's been such a good experience. Working more directly with CMS has just really given me this whole new appreciation of open source and community. And okay, I'll just keep going. And at least for me, I can really feel the pulse of Umbraco from working directly with the CMS, working with the community, and working with partners every day on solving their projects.
For sure, that's fascinating for me too. It's not just about building features, we're building a platform for others to build on top of, and obviously rely on every day. So we've got a lot to talk about today, but we thought rather than just going through a list of feature items and roadmaps, we take a slightly different approach.
Yeah, because when we started to plan this talk, we kept noticing that some of our topics that we touched upon, they were connected to more long-standing ideas around how it is to working with the CMS, and maybe also a few myths around how it is working with the CMS, almost like the culture of the CMS.
Yeah, exactly. So we started calling these bits of inherited wisdom the Umbraco law. So it's sometimes things you can and cannot do. Sometimes it's best practices. Sometimes it's just the way things have always been. And like all good law, there's usually more than a grain of truth in these things. But we thought it's worth just looking at whether these truths fully hold up today.
Yeah. So to mix things up a little bit, we're going to take a look at the latest release, what we are working on currently, and what we plan to do in the future through this lens, and see if what we have accepted for working with the Umbraco CMS is still serving us today.
That's right. So do remember, it's not a cult. But let's look at some of how these commandments of Umbraco, how they hold up today. So the first one I want to look at is that thou shalt use examine for search. So as long-time Umbraco users will know, we have a fairly hard dependency on examine, which is in turn is a wrapper around Lucene. And this includes both the search within the back office, but also what you as implementers will make available for search on the front end quite often too. And it's a great product, it's served us well, and we're going to continue to ship with it in core. Because after all, if you want something tried and tested for search, it's hard to go wrong with something based around Lucene. But it's not perfect in every scenario. With its out-of-the-box model of files on disk, it's not really aligned with perhaps modern ideas of cloud-native software. And when it comes to load balancing, it can present challenges because we have to either synchronize or share these indexes between the active nodes. And I suspect many of you will nod along when I said that some of the more complex support cases we get are related to the configuration and sometimes the corruption of examine indexes. And I'd also argue that search has become more of a first-class citizen within the CMS now that we have the content delivery API. Because previously, if the search index wasn't up to date, then, well, it was important, of course, but it arguably wasn't essential. If you're presenting content on the front end or you're managing it in the back office, it's the database that's the source of truth. And so it and its downstream caches are really the important components. But with a content delivery API, this uses a custom search index to power its output. So taking all this together, we felt there was a need to provide more options for search within the CMS, allowing you to continue to use examine if you want to, or where it's appropriate, but also to be able to support the use of other search engines. Now, this is something that's not impossible today. We've seen customers integrating external search providers, and we even showed the way ourselves a couple of years ago when we released the Algolia integration on the CMS. But it's always felt a little bit hacky, a little bit difficult to do, and there wasn't really a clean abstraction available for swapping out the indexing, and the searching of content. So the process for this started at the beginning of the year with an RFC, and as usual, we got some great feedback on that and had some useful discussions following from it. And we've then started work on defining and building this abstraction, verifying it using in-memory and external search providers, and we're now progressing a production-ready implementation using Examine. So the intention is to make that available as an add-on from HQ, so the out-of-the-box experience remains consistent. But we have a hope and an expectation that as well as that, and with some community involvement, we'll have other implementations of this common abstraction using third-party search providers. Now, we actually plan to ship the abstraction itself as as a package external to Umbraco in the coming months. So in 16, all you'll really find is just the ability to turn Examine off and switch something else in. And we've taken this approach primarily to make it easier for those of you wanting to migrate to the next LTS. So there's just one less thing to be worried about if you're happy with the search experience you have at the moment. But it also means by releasing as a package, we can release earlier and release often. So those of you that want to opt into the new way or just want to see progress at a very early stage are going to be able to whenever you feel it's appropriate for you. And then we expect to fold that abstraction back into Umbraco at some point in the 18 to 21 cycle of releases. Now, I'm particularly excited to see what we can do here once we have this in place, building on top of this to improve other areas of the back office experience, particularly around collections or list views as they used to be known. Because we've never really had a good opportunity here for presenting more complex properties. But we can certainly improve that if, as planned, we replace these from being database queries to be powered from the results of search engines. So that's probably enough on this topic for now. I don't want to steal his thunder, of course, but you'll do much better hearing from the expert on this. So if you are interested, please do check out Ken's talk a bit later in the conference.
Thank you, Andy. All right, so I will take a look at this one. Those shall use TinyMC to do rich text editing in Umbraco. And I guess this one is a little about making the best of an unfortunate situation. Because as it is in their right, TinyMC has opted to change their license on their product to one that is more restrictive than the MIT that we use in Umbraco. And so therefore we needed to, therefore we can no longer ship Umbraco with TinyMC as the rich text editor out of the box. And we had a job to figure out and find another open source that is compatible with the features, the functionalities that we had in Tiny. And as such, for Umbraco 16, the already deprecated TinyMCE property editor is being removed, and any existing properties using this one will be transferred into a new one that is using TipTap. And we've been working hard on this for the past few months, making sure that there is feature parity in this new rich text editor compared to what you are used to. So it includes all the expected formatting and some additional advanced features such as embedded blocks. We also taken the chance to rethink some of the functionality that we have added into TipTap, especially around customizing and extending the editor experience. We've been really pleased on how TipTap has played out, and it feels very aligned with the Umbraco extensive nature. We've been able to bring the features in that we will ship with in core, but as Umbraco itself, you can also extend upon TipTap in your packages or in your projects. And if you prefer to stick with TinyMCE, there is now a package available on Umbraco Marketplace. And that's given to you by our Platinum partner ProWorks. That's making sure that through this package, you can still continue to use TinyMCE with full support. In fact, if this package from ProWorks is installed prior to upgrading to Umbraco 16, this will cancel the automated migration that goes to TipTap. This can benefit very much those that have relied on premium plugins in the previous one, and it can also add some additional functionalities into the configuration some premium plugins to Tiny, and also some AI integrations that could really enhance your TinyMC experience. If you would like to know a bit more about the TipTap RTE, there is a Umbraco 16 release blog post out. There is an unboxing video on this, and there is also new and updated documentation on this area. Here you go.
Thank you. OK, the next one. Thou shalt have freedom to hack the back office. So one of the superpowers of Umbraco is undoubtedly its editorial experience, and part of that is the scope that you have as implementers to customize that to improve it for the needs of your project, whether that's using packages or via custom code. And there have been a plethora of ways, imaginative ways, proposed and used over the years to do this. But there has been a bit of a downside with this flexibility too, which has been one of occasional and inadvertent breaking changes. Because without fully knowing how the back office was being extended, it was very difficult to predict when a seemingly innocuous client-side change might cause a problem for someone out in the wild. And that's the reason why for Umbraco 14, we've limited the more free-form ways you can customize the back office and modify the models going to and from the client and server. Instead, we're exposing many discrete extension points. Now we know how customizations are being done, we can much more reliably ensure those things remain available and compatible between releases. Now, you may remember at the time of the launch of 14, we talked a lot about an extension-first approach. And by that, we mean whatever we're doing in core for the back office, we do via an extension. And that means anything we can do, you can also do in your packages or in your custom project code. So that said, there have been a few extension points that people have been looking for since the 14 release. And we've been considering and adding these since. So we now support a collection of content type filters, and these can be implemented to allow you to customize which documents are available to create at the root or under a given parent. Now, mostly you control this, of course, when you're setting up your document types, but sometimes there's a need for something a bit more dynamic. So the ability to create just one product or blog landing page. This would be a typical use case for this feature. Property value presets are a client-side extension that allows you to customize the scaffolding of content for your editors, presenting them with values they can either accept or modify. And an important point to note here that these are asynchronous, which means you actually have full freedom for defining the logic for determining what these preset values are. Maybe using other information available in the back office context, like the current user and their groups, or by making a request out to the server. And then finally, for 16, we've introduced property value permissions. Now, this feature started in a similar way, and we wanted a client-side extension point to allow you to provide custom logic for determining whether properties are presented as read-only or hidden to editors. And then, having implemented this, we then realized it would actually be rather nice if we could also make this available in the back office too. So not just developers, but administrators can make the decision about how properties on a document type are presented to different groups of editors. Now, I think he's had 2 plugs already, but we'll say one more time. If you are interested in how you extend the back office, and particularly how it's changed since Umbraco 13, please don't miss our colleague Niels' talk tomorrow.
All right, thank you. Those shall struggle a little to find updated documentation. So with Umbraco 14, we introduced a brand new front-end architecture for the new Umbraco back office, and one that really future-proofs the Umbraco CMS for years to come. But it has been a big leap forward, and not everything is caught up, and that is especially around the documentation that is affected by many of these new changes. But, and with non-updated documentation, that really leads it to be harder for developers and users in general to keep on with the latest versions. But we are here to change that, because we have a focus on that, and we've called upon the greatest powers of Umbraco, people that have real-world experience of building packages and building client projects on top of the new Umbraco back office. So I give to you the Community Docs team for 2025. This team is brought together to help validate, update, and improve the documentation, which is still lacking a thorough review with the eyes of Umbraco 14 and up. And you can take part in this. As Emma also mentioned earlier, the team has a public available overview of a prioritized list of articles that we are aiming to go through. And you can find this list on the Umbraco Docs GitHub repo. You are more than welcome to add articles to this list or to come with your suggestions. We're very open for that. But as you do, please remember that this particular project is around making sure that we have updated documentation of those that are affected by the new front-end architecture. We have, in 2026, also a planned project of reviewing and also restructuring the overall general CMS documentation. But that's for later. Now we're just focusing on the articles affected by 14 and up. And as you can see from the screenshot of the docs repo, there's still not many or none articles in progress yet, but that's because we're kicking this project off right after Codegarden. The Community Docs team is bound only for 2025, and that's it because, as Philip said, we aim to go through this prioritized list of articles by the end of the year, making sure that we have updated documentation to support not only current developers, but also those new ones that are starting to work with this as we approach the next long-term supported version of Umbraco.
Thank you.
Here you go.
Okay, next one. Thou shalt run Umbraco on Windows. Now, this one, I think we would all agree, is well out of date now. In fact, there's likely a generation of Umbraco, and by extension .NET developers, who maybe hadn't even started their careers when they had to work on at the time of the Windows-only closed-source .NET framework. But this is, of course, where Umbraco had its roots. So running Umbraco on Linux or a Mac has been possible since Umbraco 9, which was the first version that ran on the cross-platform modern .NET. And official support came in Umbraco 10, when we introduced the ability to use SQLite as a cross-platform database for local development. And more recently, we've been ensuring we can support Umbraco running in Docker containers. So I'd like to give a shout out and a thanks here to all those who have already been trying this out, and particularly those that shared their experience in the discussion we raised on GitHub earlier in the year. There's some really useful learning shared there, and it was just gratifying to verify that customers are absolutely successfully running Umbraco using this setup. So we've collated this information now into a dedicated page on the documentation site for anyone else who's looking to adopt this hosting model. And it was also pleasing to hear that efforts we have either made or are planning to make in other areas are going to make this easier still. So the utilization of the inbuilt .NET's hybrid cache that came in Umbraco 15. And as I said earlier, the possibility of swapping out the search implementation to something that doesn't expect files to exist on disk. These are going to simplify running Umbraco in containers in production. And lastly, we're working on improving the implementation of the log viewer, giving you more flexibility here via an abstraction, so we aren't, again, just expecting there always to be log files sitting there on the disk. That was a quick one. This is a bigger one.
Oh, OK. Let's try it. All right. Thou shalt not load balance the back office. This one is one of those more classic bits of Umbraco lore, I think. Advices that have been passed down from devs to devs through generations, even though that the why might have been a bit fussy over time. Most of us know, there we go. Most of us know, yes, you can load balance the front end just fine, but the back office, that's not supported. But Andy and I, we needed to find out. So we started to ask questions and do some investigation. And we found out that the documentation why, that we do document why, but the reason have actually long been resolved. So the first step of this project has really been to dig out the pain points of what it is when you load balance the back office and find a way to also resolve them. For those of you interested in the details, these are the issues that we have found that we need to address. And probably the hardest one is also the first one, where we have some deep issues with the internal caches to resolve. Currently, we have a situation where in a in a load balance scenario, if one operation on a server, an operation on one server may have flushed the caches on the others, may not have flushed the...
May not have flushed the caches.
Exactly. I'm going to take that only. Currently, we have a situation where in a load balance scenario, an operation on one server may not have flushed the cache on the other server before it picks up another request and therefore work on stale data. There we got it. But there are other issues to tackle too. Around background jobs, submit and poll operations, cache instruction pruning, and webhooks. We are now beyond the state of just identifying the issues, and we have a plan in place to solve each and one of them. And I'm very pleased to say that we are already making solid progress on this. And we will continue to work on this over the next coming month, and hopefully within long this will be an Umbraco myth that we can happily retire. And that means that you will be able to scale out not just your entire Umbraco instance, not just the front end, but also the back end much easier. There is no talk planned for this year's Codegarden around this topic. But if you want to dive into discussions on either the challenges or the solutions of this, find our great colleague Nikolai, because he has been the leading effort on this project.
Absolutely, yeah.
There you go.
Thank you. So the next one I want to tackle is that when hosting Umbraco, thou shalt run your server on UTC. And this is advice we read on the forums, and it certainly makes sense to simplify things. Because if you consider a CMS like Umbraco, there's really 3 time zones we need to bear in mind. First of all, there's UTC, Coordinated Universal Time. And this is often used as a date that everyone in the world can agree on. We then have the time zone that the server is running on, and we have the time zone as the user is given by their browser and their operating system. And it can be a little complicated converting to and from these dates when we present them, when we update them, and when we act on them within Umbraco. So I guess by hosting your server on UTC, you make it a bit simpler, as there are then only 2 time zones to consider. Now, it's Umbraco's responsibility to keep track of these, of course, and in the main, I think we do a pretty good job, but we do get issues appearing on the tracker now and then where someone just isn't seeing quite what they expect to see, and they're always a bit of a head-scratcher to try to resolve. Historically, also, Umbraco hasn't been very consistent about how it stores dates. So most of the time, we're persisting server time, but for certain system dates, we're actually already storing UTC. And with the former cases, we're storing the dates, but we aren't storing any time zone, which means if you ever change it on your server or maybe move your application to another environment that's in a different time zone, we have a bit of a problem that we don't know what the time zones of the dates in Umbraco actually represent. So we have an upcoming project to try and make this consistent and settle on the use of UTC throughout. And then we can much more reliably handle that conversion when we go to and from the dates in the back office. We're going to need a migration to take all these system dates, convert them to UTC, if, of course, the server's not already running on that time. And lastly, we don't want to forget the dates that implementers will use when they use property editors based on the date time picker. Again, these are stored without time zones, so we don't know exactly what time they represent, and we can't know that because that's going to vary from project to project. So it's not something we can migrate, but what we can do is introduce a new UTC date and time picker, which will explicitly store UTC, but via data type configuration, we can give the editors the option to manage those dates in the time zone or time zones that make most sense for them.
Thank you.
See you again.
All right. Those shall find a few concerns from an accessibility perspective. So with the new back office, we got a new opportunity and one that we're really excited about. We want to be able to improve on the back office experience and make it better for everyone with a specific focus on accessibility. Oh, that was the wrong button. There we go. Accessibility for us is twofold. On one hand, it's about meeting regulations and following best practices in the area. But just as importantly is it that we're making the back office more intuitive, consistent, and usable for everyone, whether they are relying on assistive technology or not. To make sure we're doing this right, we teamed up with Nexa Digital to conduct an accessibility audit on the back office, focusing on guiding standards. So in this case, we tested the back office up against the WCAG standard. The result of the audit come overall back very positive, and with a big praise to the back office project for thinking accessibility in from the ground up when we built the back office. But of course, there was some accessibility findings that we need to resolve. And there are also some minor adjustments that we will start working on. But all this would be much easier with the job that we already put into the back office. And rather than trying to tackle everything at once, we decided to break this down into more manageable pieces. So this first audit was focusing around the editor experience of the back office, giving us a chance to integrate the improvements in a realistic and meaningful way as we move towards Umbraco 17. But accessibility isn't just about keyboard navigation and contrast radios. It's also about simplifying and improving the overall user experience. So from already in Umbraco 16 and the minors that will follow, you will already see this through actions that are more consistent and subtle in the UI. Such as, let's see if this starts. Starting? Yes. Such as, is it started?
Yeah. Oh, the video?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Press it again.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
All right. So you will find changes such as identical entity action menus and fewer notification banners. For example, after actions like saving, creating, sorting, and deleting content, you will now see fewer pop-ups. Because when an action is completed clearly and successfully, the UI will respond with no notification banner or a subtle check mark. No more notification banners. While this might seem like a minor polish, it reduces the visual noise and minimizes the distraction and creates a calmer and more accessible experience for everyone. This is just the beginning, and you will continue to see more UX improvement and accessibility enhancements in the Umbraco back office as we move towards Umbraco 17 and beyond. Because we are really committed to building a back office experience that's not just compliant, but generally better for everyone that uses it.
Thank you again. Okay, thou shalt squint a bit when looking at Umbraco's service layer. So, as well as a new back office implementation for 14, we also overhauled how the client communicates with the server via the management API. So we now have a clean, consistent, and documented API for how the back office, or as you saw in the keynote, any other client, can communicate with Umbraco. In process, though, we step up a level to the Umbraco service layer, and this is showing its age a little bit more. Now, even though this is internal to Umbraco, it's very much a public interface. I mean, it's used in many solutions for customizations, automations, APIs, really anything where you want to manipulate or access Umbraco schema and content. And then for reasons of maintaining backward compatibility, we have a bit of a mix of older and newer approaches, making navigating the services, particularly for new users, a bit more complicated than it needs to be, and making the services themselves perhaps less performant than they could be. So this is the next area we're going to look to refactor at some point in the Umbraco 18 to 21 release range. Again, we're looking to reduce the change you'll encounter when moving from the previous LTS to the next one. But in these later releases, though, we want to accept some breaking changes for this greater good of improving the consistency in this area. And then specifically, we're going to be looking to use GUIDs over integer IDs. We want to make use of asynchronous operations wherever it makes sense to do so. And we want to consistently use the attempts pattern when we're returning the result of write operations. And we'll be releasing an announcement about this in the usual dedicated GitHub repository in a few weeks' time. So this last one's for me as well, and I think this is probably the most important one we want to tackle today, and it's that thou mightst consider that Umbraco 14, 15, 16 isn't yet ready. So we've talked today about some of the features and improvements that we've released, that we're working on, and that we plan to commence in the coming months, but really all of those are subservient to this one. You know, we had to address a big issue with Umbraco 14, moving off of obsolete and out-of-support frameworks and introducing a new back office, new UI, new APIs, new supporting services, all running on modern technologies and practices to set us up for the future. And this has entailed taking a few steps back in order to be able to move forward again. Now, as Philip said earlier, many customers are moving forward with us. They're using the latest versions, they're benefiting from the new features, and with every release, they're getting a constant cadence of improvements. And we have other customers that have preferred to stay on Umbraco 13 for now, and this is absolutely fine. It's the reason we have the standard and the long-term support versions, allowing you to opt to staying on an LTS until you're ready to make the upgrade. But clearly, Umbraco 17 is the next LTS, and our aim for that is just to ensure that there's simply no doubt that it is the best version to be on. And this is in all respects: feature parity, reliability, performance, polish. And I feel we've made a ton of progress on this across the intermediate, majors, and minors since Umbraco 14, meaning 16 is already a very solid release across all these factors. But still, this has to remain our main priority for the next 6 months.
That's right. We will continue to have a clear focus on making Umbraco the best version of Umbraco yet. And as Andy also said, we spent quite some time now dedicating most of our resources to introduce new technology and implement it as well. But we also see a time in the near future where we have more time to look at what will come next. And that's why I've been spending some time looking outward into the market and to see and understand where is it heading and where is it important for Umbraco to stay if we want to keep being relevant and visible in the market. So I've been exploring a bit of other CMS solutions, traditional .NET, more headless, and also those hybrid tools, and seeing what they are offering. And from this, first of all, I want to say that from my point of view, Umbraco is on par when it comes to the core CMS capabilities. Yes, there is a few larger things that we would still like to tackle, but overall, I don't see we are missing any fundamental content management functionality. And we continue to stay ahead on the curve for technology. And that's very important because it puts us in a very strong position, not only to focus on the market and what is next and the next checkbox, but also to improve and elevate what we already have. And I'll come back to that in a second. Because from this market analysis, a few trends stood out as some bigger capabilities that we're still not offering in the CMS. Reusable blocks and global element, real-time collaboration in the back office, AI enhancement of the content management experience, and then also enhanced visual editing experience. So let's just briefly touch on each of them. Reusable blocks and global elements are something that we've been mentioned before, and we actually already have a closed RFC on this. So there's already been put quite a lot of planning and discussion and mock-ups been reviewed into this project. But as we also need to do some time, we need to prioritize. And since there is a workaround to introducing this feature, this is one that we haven't progressed with further. But after the other things that we discussed so far, this one is next on our list because we do recognize that there is a valuable need for having this supported native from Umbraco HQ. The intention is to introduce a new library top level section to house the existing content blueprints and also these new global elements that editors with permission to this area can manage as they do documents in general. Global elements just won't have templates and they will not be themselves routable. Global elements would be pickable from within block lists and grids, allowing the editor to store references to global elements among their blocks that they define locally. And you'll be able to make a global block locally and vice versa. Real-time collaboration is a feature that I also see implemented in varying degrees in other CMSs. Some offer a more basic functionality where editors get notified if there is a new version of the content that they are currently working on. And there are other CMS solutions that offer more advanced functionalities, such as commenting and suggesting, like you would know it from Word and Google Docs. From an Umbraco perspective, we will need to figure out what works well with collaborative editing in Umbraco CMS. And we will call upon Umbraco CMS advisory board once we are ready to make some more decisions in this area. But if you sit out there already with an experience on how this could work and how it may not work as well, we would also really like to get your input, as we are looking to do this in the near future. It's actually technically already feasible due to the work that we've done with Signal R, but it's a capability that we haven't really fully explored on the front end yet. But once that our front-end resources is less focused on Umbraco 17, this is really one that we are looking forward to diving into. All right. AI is certainly not anything that we either will or can disregard. And since last year, where Philip at the keynote introduced Umbraco as a platform for AI, Andy and I, we've been busy reaching out to some of you, learning about your projects and how you've worked with AI, seeing your use cases, but also asking the question, how can we support this from the core CMS? And as Philip shared at this year's keynote, we now have joined forces with a community project that brings the Umbraco MCP server in, and we're very happy to continue on this journey and keep learning in this field. If we haven't already reached out to some of you, or if you think you're sitting with some valuable, good input on how we can improve on Umbraco with AI in the core, please reach out to us, because we would really like to learn from you as well on this point. All right, my last one. Visual editing, content builder, WYSIWYG, blog editor, all these more or less similar tools that are aiming to fill the gap between editing and presentation. It continues to gain traction in the market, I see, and they offer, and it makes sense because they offer a more fluid and intuitive editing experience that can make content feel very close to the final form. Andy and I, we're curious about how we could rethink or enhance what's already possible in the CMS, and how tools like this can work to the true values of the CMS: transparent, friendly, and genuinely helpful. So if you work with tools like this, we would also like to hear from you, because this is something that we will gonna explore later in this year to see what is even possible and what could we think of doing in this area. All right. As I mentioned earlier, I believe Umbraco is in a very relevant position in the market. And when we look beyond just comparing core CMS capabilities, Umbraco also have a very strong voice on our unique selling point, which resonates very well with the market. And this is important because it gives us a space to not only think at what's moving in the market, but also consider what features that we already have deserves a revisit. Some of them on our radar are these, that is media permission, improving the UI for rolling back content, improving tags, virtual members, and responsive UI. These are just a few of them, and this is where you are becoming really important, because we want to hear from you, what are your clients thinking? What do you think needs a revisit in the CMS, and what would meaningful improvements look to a specific feature for you? So we are planning ahead, and we would love to do that together with you. So come say hi, and let us know what matters to you. That was it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.